everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the first fireside chat for SaaStock. My name is AJ Eckstein. I'm the founder of Creator Match, the leading LinkedIn creator marketing platform, as well as a writer for Fast Company. So by show of hands, who has used or heard of Klaviyo before? Okay, we have a bunch of hands in the crowd. So it's no surprise, Klaviyo has 146,000 customers in 80 plus countries. And today we have a very special treat. We're joined by the president of Klaviyo, Steve Rowland. So Steve, thank you so much for being here. I know you guys recently went through an IPO. I'd love to know what that journey was like leading up to the IPO, as well as now being post-IPO in that transition.
Yeah, good. By the way, thanks for the Klaviyo customers that are out there. Yeah, you're a Klaviyo customer? Awesome. And for those of you who don't know what Klaviyo is, let me just give you kind of a brief update. So we power smarter digital relationships. And so effectively what that means is we give businesses the opportunity to use data, collect and store and index data about all of your customers' interactions. And then we built these applications on top really for marketing as well as other applications to allow you to use that data to engage your customers in really unique and personalized ways. So it's a little bit about Klaviyo if you don't know what we do. And so I've been here 46 weeks, which is pretty crazy. And I joined right before the company went public. I officially started around July 1st, trying to lead up to that IPO. We were the first tech IPO since 2021, so we kind of braved the public markets and went out there, and it's been really an amazing ride. The company was really run financially well, which was hard to find in tech, and so free cash flow and operating income and amazing growth is what the markets wanted. But there's still changes after you go public, right? You still have to think about executing every day while you still think strategically. The public markets care about different things than your private investors and your private board, and so you have to adapt to that while staying really focused on what made the company great, which is our customers, and staying close to those customers. So it's been a fun journey.
And it sounds like an incredible transformation pre to post IPO. In today's discussion, obviously, we're going to dive super deep into go-to-market strategies. I feel like everybody here has probably heard of the buzzword go-to-market strategy. It's thrown around a lot in the business world, but you have decades of experience, both with startups as well as enterprise, Okta, Splunk, and now Klaviyo. What were some of those actual go-to-market strategies that enabled Klaviyo to reach that scale that they have today?
Yeah, it's a good question, and go-to-market is kind of thrown around as this really ubiquitous word, and it's changed a lot. So thanks for calling out that I have decades of experience, that I don't dye my hair. I've been doing this a while. But how you used to run go-to-market 10 years ago, if I was still doing that today, this wouldn't be relevant. Like, it just would not be a relevant strategy. So the go-to-market strategies really apply to one, you have to figure out who are your customers and how do they buy. Matters a lot. And so a lot of customers today, particularly on the low end, we have a lot of you that sit in this audience that maybe use Klaviyo for your own business. We have a lot of small businesses that are it's a side hustle for someone selling jewelry or hats or whatever the case may be. They don't want to talk to a salesperson, so you have to make it really easy. You have to have a really strong PLG motion, which is different as you go up market. The requirements change. If you get into a mid-market customer, they want more expertise, they want more help. The product is more complex for the use cases they're trying to solve. So you have to really vary your go-to-market strategy around the types of customers that you're serving and what they need to be successful to engage with your customer, with you as a business rather.
And you said PLG motion, obviously PLG product-led growth, but you guys actually define PLG as partner-led growth, and you partnered with agencies to basically have them sell Klaviyo to their customers. What was that partnership like with those agencies? Because they're basically selling on your behalf and you're building those partnerships at scale.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So anytime you think about, I'll call it the ecosystem, you have to think about, again, always go back to the customers. So who are the customers using to help them be successful? And when you look at where we started, which was in the entrepreneur space and the small, medium business, it's a lot of digital agencies. It's companies that have agencies that have a couple of customers. They might have 15 or 20 customers. And so we really enable those agencies to build practices around Klaviyo to help those businesses be successful. And that really became a very important part of our strategy. And then we're also a very technology-centric ecosystem. It's just the way our market is. So it's not, Klaviyo didn't define this. There's like major components of how do you run a B2C business. You've got to have a commerce platform. Everyone's heard of Shopify and others. And then you also have to have other digital integrations to pull data into our platform to make it meaningful for businesses to be able to create those unique experiences for their customers. So the ecosystem is, I'll call that all partners, and digital agencies are a part of that.
And aside from this partner-led growth strategy, you also partnered with large companies like the Shopifys of the world. Obviously, I think everybody here would love to partner with Shopify. How did that interaction come about, and what was the reason or the decision to even build that partnership from the ground?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and as you step back now, we can say, oh, we were geniuses, and look how thoughtful we are. And for those of you who run businesses, a lot of things have to go your way. We made a lot of the right decisions along the way that ended up being really strategic for us. But it goes back to the types of customers that use Klaviyo are really the ones that are tech forward. They're leaning forward. They want SaaS. They're building modern stacks. So that's where you start. So we're a cloud native marketing automation, customer data platform. Well, what are they going to use for commerce? They're going to probably use Shopify. So the two major concentric circles for building any really strong B2C business, or even direct to consumer if you're a large enterprise, is you have to have a world-class commerce platform, and you have to have a world-class customer marketing automation platform. And those two things feed each other. So the more we market to customers and drive GMV, the more it helps Shopify. The more Shopify data they collect, we ingest to make our business, the businesses we serve, smarter. And it's this really nice virtuous cycle. So we need each other to really help power and grow the businesses that we work with.
And I think a lot of the folks in the crowd could agree that there are a lot of different go-to-market strategies that you could think of, that you could strategize, that you can execute on. How do you balance that delicate balance between focusing so much on the strategy and building the game plan or the roadmap to actually doing the hard part, which is executing the game plan, which I feel like most people forget that that's actually a huge part of the strategy?
Yeah, I totally agree. When I worked for my very first startup called Apogee that we took public back in 2016, 17, and then sold to Google, my founder would end every all hands with the word execution. And he would say, there's nothing, strategy doesn't matter unless you're actually executing on. That really stuck with me. And so I've carried that through, and Klaviyo has that same bent. Those two things of strategy and execution are so intertwined with how you actually drive your business. I would argue that execution is strategy, and that's not diminishing strategy, meaning you have to just sit there and execute every day, but it goes hand in hand. And so particularly as a public company, we execute literally on a daily basis. But we also carve out time to say, how does that execution build into our longer term strategy so that we're heading towards a North Star? That's how I think about those two things.
So if I'm sitting in the audience right now and I heard that, okay, strategy is important, execution is important, we're going to focus on our go-to-market, how do we actually think about, we said this balance, of course, right? But once we focus on one, how do we move to the other? What defines success in one vertical and say, okay, we crushed e-com, let's now move to the next vertical. Or maybe we stay in that one vertical. How do you think about moving to the next versus doubling down all your resources on one vertical or area of go-to-market?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And like when we think about building technology companies, and including myself, I think I get really excited about the technology. And sometimes we build technology in the absence of a market, and we build a technology in the absence of what the customer problem is we're trying to solve. And so how I think about that is, one, you have to define how big is the market opportunity? How are existing businesses solving the problem today? Is there competitors out there that are doing it well or not? And can you disrupt that market? And can you do it differently? And can you do it uniquely? And if you feel like you can, and that says, okay, we've got a big market to capture here. So in Klaviyo's case, the market we currently serve is a $16 billion available market. And we just reported earnings. We're about 800 million in revenue, 800 to 16 billion. Okay, we got a long way to go. So, and if you look at that space, there's really no leader in the space that can really satisfy everything that we can do. So for us to run off and start doing 10 other verticals would really leave behind a space we haven't dominated yet. So I think you have to balance when do you have a firm foothold in that market and really resist getting distracted by running to other verticals or moving up market too fast.
Yeah.
Because you end up diluting yourself and then you end up not being unique and differentiated for what your purpose is and what you originally started to do.
I know I'm a culprit of seeing every shiny object and trying to chase the next vertical and the next vertical.
Yeah.
You said waiting until you have a strong foothold. Can you quantify that? Or is it different based on the company, the industry, the actual market?
Yes.
What does strong foothold mean to Steve?
Yeah, it's different depending on market. So there's enough technology out there that you can find out market share, even if it's not independently published. Lots of web scraping tools and other things you can find. You know, once you have a good 20% of the market, you're in pretty good shape. In vertical software, I would argue that should be, 30%, and you can run up to 50. In a more generalized market, once you hit 20 to 25 to 30%, you fairly have a good foothold. So it depends on the market share you have and how fast you're growing. So if you have 10% and you're growing at 100% year over year, you're in pretty good shape, depending on how your competitors are also growing as well.
So of course we spoke about strategy, we touched on execution, but execution all comes down to the team actually executing the strategy. And you've been quoted to say that you build unstoppable teams. I think everybody here would love to build an unstoppable team. What goes into building that team like you've done with this Klaviyo culture and getting to such scale?
Yeah, it's really hard. And by the way, none of us want to do it. Like we always say, we want to hire amazing people, but it's literally the hardest thing we do. Whether you're running go-to-market or you're running product and engineering, hiring great people is really hard. And it starts with defining what you're looking for. We have a tendency to run after skills. Like, oh, AJ's Fast Company, right? Oh, you know what? You would be great in our media team because I'm only focusing on AJ's skills. What you really have to think about is what's the DNA of your company and what do you need? And I always think about things like adaptability and driven and intellectual curiosity. Always learning is another way to say that. Pragmatic intelligence. People that are humble, like those are core to what we are as a company and core to the teams we want to build. So you have to interview for that. And then you have to also look for the experience. People in really small companies don't always work great in big companies. People who come from big companies don't always work in small companies. Industries don't transfer very well many times. So you really should take the time to identify what is that, what I would call excellence profile, and then be super objective in interviewing against that, because we all fall in love with candidates because we like them, and they may not be great for your company. So it starts with hiring those individuals and being ruthless in understanding objectively where they fit. Then you have to align everyone as a team. And that really talks about working together as a high functioning team. Great material out there. Patrick Lencioni, probably one of the most proven methods of building high performing teams around trust and conflict and accountability and common results. And then you obviously have to give common purpose and objectives and how you're really going to drive towards. And if you do those things right and care and feed for your leaders, the rest of it kind of begins to take care of itself.
I mean, those are such good tips on how to build that unstoppable team, but don't just focus on the quality of the individual, but also the culture that they can add to the company. And I want to shift gears for a second and talk about the customers. Obviously, we mentioned, just the size, 146,000 customers in 80 countries with Klaviyo is just mind-boggling for anybody in the crowd. But at its core, Klaviyo empowers brands to turn customer transactions into long-term relationships. I think all of us here can agree that we want to build strong relationships with our customers. So how do you make it feel more like a relationship and not like a customer transaction?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And I always go back to the physical world. So if no matter where you live, there's this nice radius that you travel and you run all your errands. And You always kind of like to go into the local coffee shop, or maybe you got a favorite wine store, or maybe a clothing store, or a technology store. It's always such a cool feeling when they go, "Hey, Steve, it's great to see you." Like, we want to be known, and we want to be understood, and we want to feel connected to the places we visit physically. That's really hard to do in a digital world because our radius is not 10 miles or 10 kilometers. It's infinite. I buy my deodorant from an Australian company. Is that weird? But they know me. They know me. So we have that connection that we want to have as individuals and humans. And so how do you create that in a digital world is what we enable. I'm willing to give up my data, first party data, because I know I can take it back because I trust that brand. And then in turn, they get to use that to create really intimate and personalized experiences for me that make me feel known, that make me feel connected. And ultimately, it makes me trust them. And so building that trust is really important for the businesses that we work with, equally important for the businesses that we sell to or service, is that they trust us to do the right thing as well.
It's interesting. I feel like in any conversation, we're talking about data, trust is usually not talked about, or maybe the lack of trust.
Yeah.
But obviously for Klaviyo, and even I was reading some articles about Klaviyo, it says that you make your customers feel seen. And you don't usually hear seen in the same sentence as data, right? So how do you really build that delicate balance between catering to your customer and maybe helping them with, checking out, abandoning a shopping cart, let's say, as well as, inundating them with SMS, push, and email notifications?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think during the pandemic, there's this phrase we use called batching and blasting. Like, we were all sitting around our houses, bored out of our minds, supposed to be working, and yet we were shopping online, and we get a text, and we didn't mind. Like, we didn't mind being interrupted sitting around the house during the pandemic. Well, now we're traveling, we're busy, we're back to conferences. It really annoys me. My phone is buzzing, 4 times while I'm sitting on stage because somebody's trying to sell me something. That doesn't feel good. So it's really about understanding my preferences, and so we enable businesses to take the data they have that I've given them to know, when do I like to be sent messages? And by the way, do I like email, or do I like the in-app push, or do I like SMS? And usually 7 o'clock at night Eastern time, or my local time zone, is generally the best time to reach out to me because I've got a downtime. We enable businesses to understand that level of detail and pattern so that they can then customize their engagement with that consumer, so they don't feel like they're being bombarded, that they feel like they're known and seen.
And of course, Klaviyo works with just about every enterprise company out there. But you also shared that you also work with the mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
And of course, mom and pop shops might not really generate as much ROI as the whales of the world. But how do you think about that delicate balance of catering to the big whales, but also the mom and pops who actually might need the service even more to help get that customer?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, it's the ethos of who we are. We have a missional purpose to help businesses grow. We just happen to get money for our software in the process, but even when you look at the actual product, we show you the Klaviyo attributed revenue or Klaviyo value that we've generated, because it's all about our customers. And so that's the first thing, is everything we do is about helping businesses of any size grow. When they grow and they're more successful, by the way, it has societal impact, it creates jobs, it's really important. And yes, we happen to get paid in the process. So at the core of who we are, that's our purpose. The secondary piece is we've always made it easy. So we have a really complex, powerful platform, but we've always tried to make it easy. And whether that's someone trying to start a business, or that's a marketer inside of Procter & Gamble, we still want to make your life easy. And so how do you make the product very easy and usable, whether that's through our AI technology, natural language processing to drive all the back-end machine learning, or if that's setting up your very first campaign. So we really focus on continuously designing for ease of use, which ends up transcending all of those different segments.
And Steve, you're a wealth of knowledge. I could interview here for the entire conference for a week, but we are at time. So I have one final question. I'm sitting in the crowd right now. We spoke about go-to-market strategy and execution. Spoke about building an unstoppable team and unique culture. We spoke about building customer relationships, and not inundating them, but actually helping them on their customer journey. What is your final piece of advice to help me, if I'm sitting in the crowd, help my business scale to the size of Klaviyo?
Yeah, it goes back to what I said in the very beginning. Deeply understand the customer that you're trying to serve, and make sure you're building for what they need and not what necessarily building what you think is cool. Got to have a need, and it's got to have value, and it has to be a need to have and not a nice to have to really build a very successful business.
Amazing. Well, I'd like to thank SaaStock for allowing me to moderate today. Everybody here for joining us in the crowd. And Steve, one more round of applause, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome.